Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 157. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, February the 1st, from the James Strong studio in western St. Charles County. First time I've been in studio for a podcast in a long time. 3 weeks? Let me think. Yeah, it's been 3 weeks since I've been in studio for a podcast. Lots of things going on, lots of trips I've been taking. I've been out of town. Golly. I was out of town for almost 2 straight weeks, starting 2 weeks ago. Just got back in, actually Monday night. This last Monday night I just got in. Starting 3 weeks ago, I took a very early morning flight, like a 5:50 flight from St. Louis to Salt Lake City, connecting in Denver. Then after I landed in Salt Lake City about noontime, little after. Then I drove to see a guy up in north and west of Salt Lake City, almost to the Iowa border. Drove back, had a dinner in Salt Lake City, woke up for a 5:05 flight. That's right. The flight took off at 5:05, so we boarded at 4:35 in the morning. So, yeah, I had to get up super early for that one, too. But I took a flight to Los Angeles, had a busy day in Los Angeles that Tuesday. Saw a lot of customers, and just by the grace of God, had no traffic to speak of in Los Angeles. I'd never had that happen before, ever. Spent the night near the Ontario airport, got up the next morning, had people to see in the high desert up near Oak Hills in San Bernardino County. Saw them, then drove down to San Diego, spent the night there, and on Thursday morning went down into Tijuana to see folks there. And in the meantime, the trophy wife joined me, so we had a long weekend in San Diego. Got home Sunday night, was actually in town Monday, but then left Tuesday to see folks, customer calls in central Pennsylvania. Got home on Thursday late, then woke up Friday morning for one of the adventures of a lifetime, and that was had to do with the podcast. Actually, if you listen to the last podcast number 156, with the Mad Dog, Don the Legend, and the Atomic Oven. That's where I was. These guys were they're a group of friends, and they invited me along for the adventure. So I'm back in town, at least for the foreseeable future. We will be doing the podcasts from the studio. It's good to be back home. Speaking of the studio, you may have heard about the updates on the studio. You know what? Let me give the updates on the studio. First, let me take a sip of coffee. I will not describe the coffee, but I do need to take a sip because I'm thirsty. So for those of you who commented on my coffee drinking habits, there's a compromise, okay? I still took a sip, but I didn't talk about the coffee. But I guess I am talking about the coffee, aren't I? Maybe I'm not compromising after all. Anyhow, on the podcast, 4 topics today. We're going to talk about the studio and the updates I've made to the studio recently. We'll talk a bit more about the adventure of a lifetime 3 times a year that I took with Don the Legend, the Mad Dog, and the Atomic Oven. We'll talk about the Trump impeachment trial, which we had some news last night. I'm not going to dwell on that, but I do want to talk about it a bit. And then Facebook. Facebook decided they wanted to clamp down on the Strongman, and they have censored some of my comments. But we'll talk about Facebook, what comments they censored and censored, and I'll have an essay about that. So let's start with the studio, though. Studio updates. I did post pictures on Facebook, which were not taken down by Facebook on my studio. Lots of things going on with the studio. As you know, I've been updating this studio for probably about the past 6 months. I updated some, actually about a couple of years ago, I put new microphones in here. I'll sound PR40s. They're still here. They're not mounted yet, which is why the podcast may sound different, because I'm not broadcasting using a Heil Sound PR40, but I'm using a Samson R315. Different mic, you may hear a different sound. But then again, you may not hear a different sound. You may not care. But it sounds a little different to me. Took me a while to get this thing dialed in. But the big changes I've had here in the studio. Brand new table with wire grommets to end the cords. The table is almost as long, but it's much wider. Didn't need the length, but the girth always helps. Is that what the ladies say? Not sure. But the table is a lot wider than it used to be, but not quite as long. In other words, it fits better. I had considered buying a professional studio-type table. It was $4,000. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. I considered having a tabletop made, custom made, just the way I liked it, and then building the rest of it around it. That was going to be about $1,200. I wandered into a closeout furniture store, and I found this very nice table that's, I think it was meant to be a dining room table, but really looks sharp, really looks cool. It was an orphan that had no chairs. A guy didn't want it. He sent it back, and I bought it for $150. The Mad Dog helped me haul it over here and get it up to the studio. So I didn't spend $4,100. I didn't spend $1,200. I spent $150 on a very nice table that I was able to, in about an hour's time, make some alterations to, put in some wire channeling grommets to give me a whole lot more room, a ton more room in the studio. Had to have a new computer, too. Had a guy build one for me. I had to upgrade my computer system because I was running on Windows 7. And the software I had would not take Windows 10, so I had two choices. I could update and buy new software for $650, or for half of that, I could buy a new computer and upload software that's shareware that works almost as good as the software that I have, the Adobe Audition. So I'm running two computers now. I'm running my brand new computer that was built for me with Windows 10, and I'm running Audacity for a audio program. I still have my old laptop running Windows 7, but offline, so it's not connected to the internet. So if I need to import files, I can just put them on a disk, put them on that computer, and Windows 7 works just fine. But it's you don't want to have Windows 7 on the internet, folks. For those of you naysayers that don't really care about that, running the internet with Windows 7 is like having sex without a condom. Sure, you may be fine, but why take the risk? All right. What else is new? The Rodecaster Pro is not really new, but that's something I've had for quite some time now, close to a year. It's able to let me do a whole lot more, a whole lot easier, and I can take phone calls, which we had the podcast with Jerome Koningfeld a little while back. What else? New Heil Sound headphones. That helps me, not so much you, but we also have headphones for the guests. So if you're a guest on the James Strong Show sometime in the future, you too get headphones so you can hear what's going on, and you can go ahead and get closer or further away from the microphone. It's going to make for a better podcast. Still need to mount the mics so I can start using those Heil Sound PR40s. I need to mount the computer because right now the computer is underneath my table sitting on my box of camping gear. So not exactly professional, and I will need that camping gear box sometime, hopefully when the weather gets warmer, hopefully not in the distant future. But the goal is to continue to improve this podcast slowly but surely. I think I'm doing it. That's certainly my goal. And my goal is to make the podcast as entertaining as possible so that it can you can continue to download it and listen at your leisure, so you can enjoy, smile, yell, scream, holler, learn, all those kind of things that I try to put forth in the James Strong Show podcast. Okay? There's the update. Again, if you want to go to the James Strong Facebook page, you can see pictures of the new studio. They are there. I did want to talk also a little bit about the trip we took last week. I guess it went into this week, technically. But it was part of the adventure of a lifetime 3 times a year, and I really like to do that. People laugh about it, but it's true. we all have to work for a living. Most of us do anyway. And it's necessary that we work for a living, but it's also necessary that we take some of those tickets that we buy with the money and have fun. The Mad Dog invited me out with two of his buddies, Don the Legend and the Atomic Oven, invited me out into their inner circle for a long weekend. These guys have been friends for 40 years. They have a truly special relationship. We went out basically just to look around the Southwest, the mountains, the desert, and just spend time out there in God's country. These guys do this every year. They've done it, I think, on the same weekend for, I want to say, 3 years in a row. They invited me into their inner circle this time around. I thank them for that. I will tell you that those guys, while they certainly drank more booze than I did, I took more naps than they did. So maybe that's me versus them, the lightweight versus the manly men. I don't know. But 1 down, 2 to go on Adventures of a Lifetime, 3 times a year. I did want to talk a little bit about the big news story. I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm just going to have a minor essay on this, and it has to do with the impeachment hearings, the Trump impeachment hearings. I will say that this thing is winding down now because no witnesses are going to be called in the Trump impeachment hearing, so this thing's going to be over by probably midday, maybe Monday afternoon at the very latest. They've shut it down for the weekend. They're going to start on Monday, okay? No witnesses are being called. The Senate voted 51-49 not to call witnesses. And by the way, there were no witnesses, no live witness testimony heard in the Clinton trial. None. Zero. Not one. Now, there were taped closed-door depositions, but there were no witnesses called. So for those of you who say, well, this is outrageous, they won't call witnesses for the Trump. Well, they didn't call witnesses for the Clinton trial either, okay? This impeachment trial, in my opinion, was a partisan witch hunt. And by the way, so was the Clinton impeachment trial. They were both partisan witch hunts, okay? The people, I guess the two people the two U.S. senators that expressed best as to why witnesses didn't need to be called were basically they were both Republicans, both very moderate Republicans, both very centrist Republicans, okay? Lamar Alexander from Tennessee and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. And they were both very wise reasons why they did not vote to call witnesses. Lamar Alexander, said, sure, Trump acted improperly. He certainly did. But what he did was not an impeachable offense. Is what he did improper? Sure. I think it was. I absolutely think it was. But here's the thing. The last president did improper things. So did the guy before him, and before him, and before him, and before him. And by the way, the next president will do things that are improper. If you're a man or woman who has enough gumption and drive to be president of the United States, you're going to do unconventional things. You're going to push the envelope. You're going to do things that others don't like. That's just what's going to happen. Obama did it. Clinton did it. Both Bushes did it. Reagan did it. Carter did it. You can go on. And whoever's the next president will do it. That's just how it works. Okay? Lisa Murkowski perhaps had the wisest statement. She said, look, continuing this process, it won't change anything, so let's just stop right now. Let's just stop right now. And that, in a nutshell, is good counsel. And like I said, by the way, Clinton, no witnesses were called with Clinton, but Clinton's impeachment trial was a witch hunt. It absolutely was. It was a big-time witch hunt. Why was Clinton impeached, or why was he even brought to trial for impeachment? Well, because the Republicans ran the House, and they could. Newt Gingrich had polling data that said he could pick up more seats in the House if there was an impeachment trial that went on. So he did it. Gingrich went forth with the impeachment of Bill Clinton so he could pick up seats in the House. In other words, it was a political ploy. This time around, same.